What if the secret to fostering lasting communities lies in the transformative power of events? Join us as we uncover how the intersection of events and technology can create vibrant communities and authentic connections. Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest Virginia Frischkorn. Topic: Gather, Engage, Connect. How events foster lasting communities. Episode 175 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you're gathering, engaging, and connecting. In this episode of Positivity Hack delivered, Virginia Frischkorn, a former event industry professional turned tech founder and the mastermind behind Partytrick, will share her incredible journey. With over $100 million in events produced for top global brands and accolades from Vogue and Martha Stewart weddings, Virginia is redefining the experience economy through innovative technology. Virginia, let's start with a simple question. Where are you joining us from?
First, thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm sitting in Denver, Colorado today.
Beautiful location. It's hot, hot, hot here in Turks and Caicos. So let's go to this very fascinating topic of community gatherings and fostering innovation through community power. Virginia, you've produced over 100 million events for top global brands. What was the moment when you realized that events could be more than just gatherings, that they could actually build lasting communities?
I think I always knew they could build lasting communities. I grew up in a family that hosted and entertained a lot. My father was an entrepreneur, part of the YPO community. And so I grew up in these community building events, then stumbled into that career professionally. And as shared, did 16 plus years in luxury, ultra luxury event production. And then COVID, to really bring it back, punctuated that gathering is a necessity, not a luxury. And that gathering, that in-person connection is really what builds and fosters connection and community.
Did you know that the first recorded large-scale event in history was the ancient Olympic Games in 1776? It was just about competition. It wasn't just about competition. It was about bringing people together across city-states. Studies show that people who attend events feel a 25% stronger sense of belonging than those who don't. What's the magic ingredient that transforms an event into a true community building experience?
I think when people are together in person and they feel safe, they feel secure, they feel seen, that's when the stage is set to build that connection, to build that community. I think a lot of times people ignore, honestly, the guest experience. They are ticking off boxes to make sure they have the things that they need. But I like to suggest that people put themselves in the shoes of the most uncomfortable guest. And if that guest feels comfortable, they know where the bathroom is, they have a glass of water, then they immediately let their guard down a little bit more and they're able to actually truly connect because their feelings honestly have been taken into consideration, which opens them up to connecting with others.
So it isn't just a buzzword, it's a feeling, it's a sense of belonging. How do we create that security and safety during a gathering?
I used to joke with my clients, and this was really specific to luxury wedding clients, but I think it'll resonate with pretty much everyone. I would always go to them and say, look, you're going to have a phenomenal experience at your wedding, right? Like you are the bride, you're the groom, it's your day. But think about that girl. And I'm going to put it, play into some traditional gender roles, but think about the girl who just got invited as a plus one with the rowdy groomsmen. and she's coming and she's showing up and she knows no one there. If she's been contemplated, if her experience has been contemplated, she knows where to go, when to be there, simple things like what to wear and making sure she actually feels safe and secure. If you can put yourself in her shoes and make sure she has a good time, then everyone is going to kind of be able to let their guard down. So what that looks like, again, excellent communication before and after, making sure that the event is laid out with adequate food, adequate water, music that's loud but not too loud, enough to really kind of set that stage. But really, again, going back to that, put yourself in the shoes of the most uncomfortable person. And if that person's comfortable, they will feel safe and able to actually actively engage.
So I think community is also about what role players are in the community. Would you say that there are key players, and how do you motivate them to really have that glue moment?
Yeah, I definitely agree that there are. And I think about a lot of the networking events, whether it was something as part of a community that I've been part of or some of the organized events that we've facilitated for others. I think it's always great to identify a couple key people who go out of their way to really kind of be that ambassador, actively engage those in the crowd, have some, things in their back pocket, some tips in their back pocket to engage the crowd and spark conversation, to spark delight. I'm a big fan of small interactive, like not cheesy, but interactive activities and moments that encourage active participation. They take the guard down. You're, engaging, whether it's this sounds silly, but like building bath salts or some sort of a crafting thing. I've done these at events and they work exceptionally well, whether we've had executives from top financial institutions or just a group of, women networking and talking about their professional communities. That active engagement really allows people to let their guard down and start having, it's almost like talking to a child who's in the backseat of a car. That's when you have those best conversations. So if you can plant a couple key people to guide your group, to guide the community at these events into activities, ask them questions that are more additive than just, what do you do? Or what was the most exciting thing you did recently? But truly, like, what was the most exciting piece of media you consumed? Value additive conversation. I find that's really helpful. And again, designating those like ambassadors will foster that connection.
You've been featured in Vogue and Martha Stewart weddings, which is no small feat. How do you think the aesthetic and design of an event contribute to creating those connections, that authentic connections that you talk about?
I love design and I love a beautiful event, right? It's nothing is like for me as someone who is motivated and driven by beauty and loves the aesthetic. A beautiful stage being set with gorgeous flowers, great lighting, those details is really key, right? But it's subtle. I don't think people remember what the flowers necessarily were. They remember if it was hot or cold. They remember if it was too loud, too quiet. So those aesthetics really do play into it, but it's making sure that they hit that kind of like just good enough, but you're not obsessed only on those things. I also really like to remind people to engage all of the senses, even things like smell. We've scented pathways, we've had incense and lavender, things so that way you're really creating kind of this like all-inclusive, holistic environment for that community to flourish. That's one of the things that I really look at. Again, a beautiful event is a beautiful event, but that's not good enough. It's really about engaging all the senses and actively engaging the community that's there and participating in the space that you've created.
So Partytrick is such an innovative platform. You mentioned that you started it during pandemic. Tell us about the beginnings of your platform.
I started a beta of Partytrick right after COVID hit. At the time, I was running 3 events businesses. I had 2 very young children, single mom, and a full team. And I realized, as I shared earlier, gathering's a necessity, not a luxury. And we wanted to make gathering easy and accessible to all. So whether you're gathering with, your kids for a movie night, how to engage people. So we created this concept of these blueprints. And a blueprint is this guide of how to put together an experience. And we launched the first iteration in August of 2020. And the goal was, let's make it accessible. Give people the blueprints for the design, for the conversation, to sending them nudges of what to do, when to do it. And that's really where it started. It took a little path to decide when business came back, and then I shut down my live in-person production company and launched Partytrick full-fledged in 2022. We launched with consumer. We've now evolved to really support large enterprises as well as small businesses by creating this end-to-end platform. One spot. I find events are so chaotic. You're going to so many different sources to know like what to do, when to do it, how to do it. You don't know if it's cohesive. And I think that, breeds some insecurity in the hosts. They want to make sure they've crossed their T's and dotted their I's, but they don't know if they actually have, because they're holding on to such scattered and chaotic information. So Partytrick really streamlines, makes that process super smooth. It's this content-rich project management tool that contemplates everything end to end. So you can just like have that sense of ease and peace and actually engage with those that matter instead of be worried about all the little details. So yeah, it started out of COVID, and it's evolved greatly in the last 5 years.
Well, it's a great time to celebrate, because it's going to be 5 years of PhD, Woman on It, Hack the Future. This is exactly in March. I launched a PhD as an alternative to our monthly meetings, and we had 170 something episodes by now. So it's a great way of interacting with community. Virtual events, so 1,000 increase during the pandemic. It's proof that technology can bring people together even when they are miles apart. One thing that I remember during some of the gatherings was how uncomfortable people felt, like they didn't really communicate. How to break that cycle if you're running a virtual event, how to break that mold of I'm not going to speak because I'm going to look ridiculous, or maybe my question may not be so intelligent.
I think virtual events are so hard, and I think we get so concerned that people are going to judge us, or again, like the question might not be smart enough. I'm going to sound like an idiot. Why would I actively engage? I have 2 children. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and my son's the one who holds back, and my daughter is just like so vibrant and just puts herself out there and isn't worried about anyone judging her at all. It's the most beautiful thing. I think about kids, right? And most kids, when they're feeling safe and they're secure, they're just going to like spout out, and not in necessarily like a aggressive way. But I encourage people, when you're doing these virtual events, to make sure you do the little breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are so valuable because they're smaller settings. So those that are afraid to talk in front of like 30 people on a big Zoom, they're able to kind of like integrate and have more small dialogue. Again, things that are additive icebreakers to get people actively engaging, where it's not just like, hey, here's my intro, but it was, what was the coolest, again, piece of media you consumed recently? Or what was the greatest gift that you got recently? It sounds a little bit superficial, but it gives people ideas, and then it slowly starts breaking down walls. So planting some of those questions, doing some of those smaller breakouts. But I feel like online or virtual events are almost like starting a business in and of themselves. And what I mean there is the way that you actively engage and participate. You're always going to sound a little stupid. Like you're never going to like the way your voice sounds, or you're always going to be afraid of like how you look on the camera. Like let it all go, take that deep breath, and just take the leap and actively engage, because that is like incredibly brave, and it's the first step. And action inspires other action. I know when people are actively participating, it's easier to participate. So be that one who just jumps in and says the thing. But as an organizer, go ahead and layer in prompts. Have that like chat on the side. And again, almost like in-person events, plant a couple people who will kind of like go in, and then almost even they can DM other people and be like, hey, what did you think? Would you mind popping in? Because that will actually encourage the activity, and it'll encourage more engagement.
So communication is critical. Were there moments that you like cringeworthy moments during your launch of Partytrick? Was there some failures that you remember and you learned something from them?
Oh my goodness. I think with every business, there's failures, there's pivots, there's evolutions. I like to call them evolutions instead of pivots. And pivot sounds like you're changing your mind, and evolution, like you're constantly learning. It's opportunities. And I'm a big fan of doing SWOT analysis, whether it's an event or how I did on a running race. And if look at the iterations, I mean, this is our 4th rebuild of the technology. It's been a ginormous learning curve. I have made numerous mistakes with some of the hires that I've made. I've been very lucky and fortunate with many of them. But, it's about documenting what those mistakes are and then learning from them. So, yeah, I mean, I've hired too quickly. Again, always like hire slow, fire fast. I've held on to people and haven't fired them fast enough. Some for good reason, some not. I also, as one who's in the events industry, like I'm striving for perfection. I want to create the perfect experience. And I think with business, and especially with Partytrick, it's all about the progress, not the perfection. We've recently launched this B2B platform and it's not ready. Like it's good enough, right? And it's past an MVP. It's an MVP that does delight, but it's not where I want it to be, but I'm not letting that get in the way. And so again, I mean, oh God, I think more failures in terms of like the learning curve, specifically to building out the technological components of our business.
Was there a party that you failed tremendously and you learned something from that experience?
Yes and no. I had this huge event. It was like a $3 million+ event that I was doing. And I put it on one of my team members and I wasn't monitoring some of her work close enough, which is a good and bad thing, right? You want to trust your employees and go ahead and let them go. Fortunately, the party ended up coming together, but about 3 weeks before, we realized we had didn't have 300 yellow napkins for one of the lunches. We didn't have one of the entertainers that was supposed to be flying in. The caterer who was flying in from New York to do this event didn't have half the equipment for their kitchen. This is in a remote environment. And it was this scramble. So how are you putting the systems together to set yourself up for success? And in that case, we had the systems, but the team member wasn't actually implementing them and using them. And it created, fortunately, the event was a tremendous success, but the planning process was in my opinion, a tremendous failure.
So that was part of the people factor.
Now control. Yeah.
Yes, trust, but also check is important factor in especially at the early stages of creating a startup. The future of experiences. Can you tell us how smart AI and automation is shaping the next generation of social gatherings and event planning?
I think with technology, with AI, with all these tools that are enhancing automation capabilities, ours included, it'll accelerate the planning process. And I think that's incredibly beautiful because it'll allow events and in-person experiences to get more creative. It'll allow experiences and the people who are organizing them to get back to their strategic work and think about how to actively engage people in the room more, or how to compose the guest group, because they're not spending as much time on the logistics, on the organization. And that's part of what we're striving towards. If we can save 10 to 40 plus hours in the planning process, because we're automating tasks, we're already generating ideas, versus relying just on the event organizer to go and research a ton, we can go ahead and get back to what matters most, right? And a lot of that's how are you optimizing, how are you putting the right people in the room to spark that community, to foster engagement. I look at it as amazing. I have one of our members on Partytrick reached out and she's like, my husband just ran a 100-mile race and I want to do this is a social event. I want to do a celebratory event. Do you have any running race celebrations? This is on the consumer platform. I was like, oh God, no. Great. I'm a big runner. I love that idea. But I immediately jumped on chat and I'm like, okay, I need ideas for this. It was so helpful. And it's funny because people are like, how is chat going to remove elements from your business? It's not. It's going to help accelerate my team's workflow. It's going to help generate new ideas that are going to accelerate, but the operational and how we actually engage, those events are just going to get better and better because people can be more present and have more unique experiences. I always like to say there should be a moment of surprise and delight. So when we were designing these large scale events, and we do this with Partytrick as well, how are we creating those delightful moments that people remember? And it could be just something small. It could be a detail on, a cocktail store, something that's slightly unexpected that imprints. Again, the large swath, all of the large stuff doesn't really imprint, but those little weird, quirky moments of spark, joy and delight, that does. And I think AI can help us generate new ideas faster, quicker, to really then implement those and be more present during those moments. And the present presence is the present, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, human brains is wired to remember emotional experiences more vividly. That's why events that evoke joy, surprise, or connection stay with us together. So, what kind of surprise do you have for us, Virginia?
Oh, great question. I didn't prepare a great surprise. You know, I mean, I think the surprise is, again, going back to what is that one unique. So I'm hosting 2 events tomorrow. They're both kind of network community events here in Denver, which is why I'm here at the moment. One is a hypno breathwork class, and then the other is just a cocktails and conversations. But they're both about building community, right? And one is at a bar studio with an amazing hypno breathwork teacher. But we're surprising people and bringing in a sponsor who is a jewelry company, and she's actually going to surprise everyone with like little earrings at the end, something that she's donated, something that she sponsored. No one knows this. This will come out after, so hopefully no one sees it before. So it's small, and they're not like wild and crazy, but it's these little moments that are unexpected. And I have a little trick up my sleeve for tomorrow evening where I like to send everyone home with either like muffins for the next day or a little thing of coffee. Again, it sounds silly to do this, and it sounds a little bit like materialistic, but I would say the personalized touches, those surprises, they actually really do matter. People remember them. And I think in this fast-paced world, those moments of slow thoughtfulness, those little surprises are really helpful. And it could even be something that's very inexpensive, like send in the thank you note, hey, here's the playlist we listened to. Or, hey, I saw this meme and it made me think of something that's going to make, again, a value additive, or will spark like a laugh or some humor. Is way better than rank my event on a scale of 1 to 5. Those personalized and slightly customized follow-ups are actually really, they stick out because people don't do those.
Well, it sounds almost like we are running a Megan Sussex show today. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell everybody listening to us, this event is not going live. This is a pre-recorded event, so Virginia can focus on her events tomorrow. You've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. What's one event you produced that truly transformed the way a community interacted with your brand or with the brand that you created the event for?
You know, this is a unique answer, and not having thought about it too much in advance of this one. I share this because it was really impactful from a community building perspective, but it's not widely relevant to a lot of people. So just keep that in mind, and I know that. We produced a 4-wheel drive experience for Ferrari when they were launching their FF, which is the first 4-wheel drive Ferrari. And this is way back when. And it was really pivotal for me. It was like my second, third year of producing live events. And the reason I bring this up in terms of community building was it was a 2.5-day experience. And for these luxury brands, you know, I was meeting with the GM of one of the largest global jewelry companies recently. I was talking to him about the negotiation and sales. And he goes, you know, Virginia, and this goes back to Ferrari in a moment, like we sell luxury. We sell items that no one needs. You know, I put Ferrari in that bucket as well. So if you're thinking about brands that are selling something, especially in the luxury space, community is incredibly important. That's what fosters kind of like long-lasting buyers. And so this event that we produced was a series of, you know, a couple-day events over the course of the winter. And they paid so much attention to the experience that their guests had. Obviously, they have a very large budget, and the ROI potential is very high. But again, it was really about that guest experience that really matters the most. And you'd come out of it. And I know that those communities, and especially those core groups of people that were together during those experiences, still stay in touch because we actually still get information about it. And this is like 14 plus years later, where it was such a tight-knit experience, small, intimate, actively engaged, doing something together versus, hey, I'm just coming to a cocktail party. Again, not easy for a lot of people to reproduce, but it was incredibly impactful. And if you think about how you're building these like experiences, some of the repetitive nature, a little bit of longevity, and a smaller, tight-knit organization is way better and more impactful than these large scale. But again, repetition and consistency is something that I find to be really key in terms of making long-lasting impressions.
The experience economy is a term we hear a lot these days. How do you see events shaping the future of how we connect, not just as consumers, but as human beings?
I love the experience community and the experience economy, because like I saw this trend over the last 16, 18 plus years where the number one priority in the beginning of my career in events was about the look, the aesthetic, the band, which doesn't play into the experience. Ultimately, that transition and clients cared less about what they were spending. It was less about showing off. It was less about that Instagrammable moment, but it was about, I feel like I've said this a million times now. I wonder if we ran it through AI, how many times it truly is, but it really became about the guest experience. And events play such a large role. You know, there's a stat that 80% of people who actually engage with a brand or with a community through an in-person experience are that much more likely to become loyal, repeat buyers, repeat kind of parts of that community. Millennial Gen Z, I think it's Gen Z, it's like 93% of Gen Z expects an experience from a brand. And part of that's like obviously their buying experience, but a lot of that is actually an in-person experience. So events are critical. It's a growing category. It's 15% CAGR right now. It's more important than ever because acquisition costs for community, for customers is higher than ever. So retaining them through these in-person experiences is going to be critical, and part of the reason why the experience economy is growing and growing and why we should be paying attention to it.
Well, it's been coined in 1998, so it's not that new. But the idea dates back to ancient rituals and festivals, which were all about shared humor experiences. Also, I've noticed the trend of immersive experience. When I went to Amsterdam with my daughter, it was all about immersing yourself with pictures of famous photographers or famous painters. So that's the term that is resurfacing quite often, and even in the tourism industry and many other industries. So you've transitioned from being an event producer to tech founder. What inspired you to take that leap, and how it changed your perspective on community building?
I fell into producing events because it was easy for me. Again, as I shared at the very beginning, I grew up in a family that entertained a ton. I knew how to kind of do those three core skills: the plan, the design, and the execute. Most people are good at one of those, not all three together. It's just how my brain works. I grew up in it. And so I fell into this like live events business. However, my very first job before I launched my businesses was at a luxury hotel. It was a 5-star, 5-diamond hotel in Aspen, Colorado, but it didn't have any systems. And one of the very first things I did was I created all the SOPs for that hotel. I had to document everything. And it's funny, I was speaking with the former GM of that hotel recently about it and sharing that experience, even though I hated it, transformed the trajectory of my career drastically. And so I did the same thing when I launched my businesses. I documented. I then, because I'm an efficiency nerd and productivity nerd, started layering this into these workflows in Asana. And it allowed me to scale my businesses. It allowed me to train teams very quickly. And then I realized, okay, look, I have this basically structure and kind of analog that could teach others. So I taught planners and I created a course to teach others our system. It was that much more efficient. I could put one person on 40 plus events at a high touch events, which is very uncommon from a ratio perspective. That ultimately led me to realize, wait, I'm not dreaming big enough. If I can impact this, why don't I dream bigger? Let's get this out there for everyone. And this is going to sound very, very cheesy, but there's a book that was incredibly pivotal in my childhood called Miss Rumphius. And in this, Miss Rumphius travels all around the world, has these amazing experiences, but what her calling is to make the world just a little bit more beautiful. And so she spreads lupin seeds all over. And so she's known as the Lupin Lady. And I look at this as I now built a tool that's essentially like planting lupin seeds everywhere. And I've empowered others to take the tools that we have so they can build those connections. They can build the community. And I think in the state of the world these days, not to sound depressing, but we need that. We need connection. We need joy. We need community. And if I can give others the tools that we built, we used successfully for 16 plus years, over hundreds of staff members, anyone can do this. And hopefully that leaves the world in a slightly more beautiful space.
Oh, absolutely. As you can hear, my cat is demanding my community to come together, gather.
I'm the one that got it. Totally. I love it.
He demands communication from me. But before we wrap up, let's talk about what's the one common mistake people make with trying to build communities through events, and how can you avoid it?
I think the one big mistake when people are trying to build community is they actually try a little too hard. They want to make sure it's perfect. They're crossing every single T, dotting every I, and they're ignoring some of the things that they get too far behind. So they're ignoring, again, the communication and setting realistic expectations. So again, how to avoid it? Plan ahead. Most people plan events too last minute. I'm guilty of doing that for my own events. So plan ahead, use that tool, always give yourself more time. One, is going to save you financially. Two, it's going to allow you the space to kind of design and implement those elements of surprise and delight. And then when you're there, when it's happening, actively engage. I was at a networking event with a pretty prolific, and well-renowned host. And honestly, he looked miserable the entire event recently. And I was there and I was like, he's not engaging. And people take the tone from whomever's leading. So when you're hosting, remember, I think one big mistake is we all stand back because we go into event production mode. Engage, be a host, be a gracious host, embody what many people think of as Southern hospitality. Turn on the charm. That's going to really open things up instead of just setting the stage and then taking a step back. So plan ahead and actively engage.
Plan ahead, actively engage, but let's talk about power of improvisation. I'm sure you had moments when you had to improvise because some tools were not performing well.
All the time. As planners, our job is to come up through A through Z, right? And so a lot of that, why I say plan ahead, is so that you can implement plans B, C, D, E when they go awry. So, your caterer doesn't show up, there's a car accident, and the entertainment gets stuck behind it. So it's thinking, okay, if something goes wrong, what am I going to do? And that goes back to, if you want to be a present host, making sure that you have that plan B, that plan C in your back pocket is incredibly important. And also remembering no one knows what it was supposed to be. I think a lot of times, we have this idea in our head of what an experience is supposed to look and feel like. And maybe a donated product doesn't show up on time. Well, so what? No one knows it was supposed to be there. So it's reminding yourself, okay, do we have the basics? Are we covered? Do we have food? Do we have beverage? If the entertainment doesn't show, do we just have a speaker? Those things are going to be fine. No one's going to know that there was supposed to be this person there. And then gracefully handling when things do go awry versus broadcasting that things have gone awry. I once had a client who felt the need to narrate all of the things that were going to be happening. Wildly, it was good for his stress probably, but really not ideal for the guest's stress. So if things start to go awry, calm, cool, put on that poker face, because again, rally a couple people for help if you need to, but don't broadcast it because no one needs to know. No one knew what it was going to be anyhow. So that planning ahead will allow you that time to respond in a more cool, calm, and collected fashion.
FOMO, fear of missing out. How to make sure that your event was successful, but also make sure that people are attending the next event in bigger numbers.
I think FOMO is such a thing. Again, I look at how to show that highlight reel, how to make sure you're documenting it. I think when we're hosting, we forget to document. And so sharing, okay, so if say you invite 80 people to an event, 20 people come, which honestly sounds like it's not great attendance, but actually is for kind of a networking community event. How do you increase that? One, keep the people engaged that first time. Show them what they missed a little bit. Give teasers. Show the highlight reel, and give plenty of lead time. Again, scarcity is really a helpful tactic as well. We have 2 seats left. Hey, 2 tickets just opened. I mean, you may not have actually, I do this all the time. We have this for the event tomorrow. I have 10 seats left for my breathwork class. But I'm like, oh, we just had 2 open up, like hurry, because then that creates that feeling of, oh, there's that scarcity tactic. And I think right now scarcity is a big thing. And then they feel like, oh my goodness, I'm so lucky when they actually get that spot, whether it's true or false. Again, those are things that you know and can keep in your toolkit. But really it's about show that highlight, remind people what they're missing, and then add in that layer of scarcity to kind of like drive signups, to drive attendance. And again, maybe do something that's exclusive for those that do attend. So, hey, here's an exclusive giveaway. Here's something exclusive if you're actually able to be there. I find that's less motivating, but it is something to layer in if need be or desired.
Cupcakes or whatever it might be. Absolutely. So apparently hybrid events combining in-person and virtual experience are predicted to grow by 25% annually. It's a game changer for inclusivity and accessibility. So we've seen events industry evolve over the years. What's one trend you're most excited about right now?
You know, I think that one of the things I'm most excited about with events, and I know that I keep saying this, the ability to personalize and customize events now because capacity is opened up. So whether that's doing more information and more research on those who are attending, I see, and that's something that we're really intentional about, and honestly something that we have built into the platform of how do you know who's coming, and how can you almost put together like a little Facebook and how to like curate these experiences or connections while you're at these events. We did this very impactful event this past fall, and it was something that we have on Partytrick, but it was where we were able to take a more comprehensive intake, like not excessive, but enough so that we knew what people were looking for when they were coming. And that way we were able to facilitate it with myself and another brand, the connections that actually happened. And because there's more time, if you use tools that automate, if you're leveraging AI for idea generation, it allows for that greater experience to happen and those more meaningful connections to occur that otherwise would have just kind of gotten pushed to the wayside. And you're able to do a little bit more research and make those more meaningful connections. So love that we can do this hybrid, but for those that are in person, it's an amazing way to kind of facilitate connections and better experiences. And then for those that are hybrid, how can you kind of make those hybrid people feel a little bit more included? And some of that comes in the post follow-up and even engaging on the way there. And I do find that they're getting left out less. But it's all about, again, remembering that you want to make just as good of an experience for those who are coming in virtually. And that's not about sending like, here's the same food that we're eating. It's not about that. It's really about being thoughtful and intentional and not making them feel like, oh, I couldn't come, I'm going to miss out. So customized communication channels for them.
The largest event in history was 2019 Kumbh Mela in India with over 200 million attendees. If you could design the ultimate event to bring the world together, what would it look like and what message would you want it to send?
Wow. Oh my goodness. You know what? I think the ultimate event would be something to encourage people to, it sounds fairly basic, but it wouldn't be like everyone in one spot. It would really be everyone with those that they love and care most about their like most connected community. If I could design it where I could get people together in whatever kind of their primary location is with their primary community, with killer food, killer music, and then one moment of delight. Who knows what that would be? I have to think on this one. This is a great question. But I can't the spot. And I think the one key message would be, it's like those human interactions. That's what matters most. At the end of the day, I lost my father in 2020, and I look back at the most meaningful experiences, and it's with those that we love and share and cherish the most. And those are the experiences when you're truly connected that have the greatest impact. And so making that happen for people as opposed to having some like massive headliner, like that's great. People are going to talk about it, but that leaves you feeling it's a high point, but it doesn't give you that warm fuzzy that creates that ultimate sense of belonging that I think as humans we deeply need.
Does it mean that you want to create event for Tay?
It's so funny. Having come from the luxury wedding industry, and my daughter who's obsessed with her, I talk with a lot of my friends that are still in the space and are like, oh my God, I really hope I get to do her wedding. And, one of them probably will at some point, given the type of, these are the top event planners in the world that are investors in my party in Partytrick now and in my community. So I'm so excited for them to do this. I would love to take something for her and spread it and like that she could curate or someone would curate for her, who knows, and be able to kind of like spread the joy, spread the wealth, because she's an icon and she's done such tremendous things in terms of give back as well.
Oh, absolutely. She's driving economy in many parts of the world with her concerts. Right. Let's go to the topic of female entrepreneurship. What advice would you give to females to help their career or start an entrepreneurial journey?
It's just starting. Progress is more important than perfection. So just dive in. You're never going to feel 100% ready. I feel like for female entrepreneurs in general, we want to make sure it's perfect. We never demand as much as we should. We don't dream as big as we could or should. And so the advice is just one, dream bigger and get started. And really focus. I think one of the greatest things that we have, like we typically, women have like strong networks, and leverage your network. Your network is your net worth. And I mean, the last thing there would be to stay adaptable, stay flexible, change, evolve. I'm not saying pivot, but get the idea out there, get feedback, listen to feedback. Like, even if you have a great idea, if the market doesn't like it, it's not a great idea. It's a great idea. That's not the right time. So get out there, stay flexible, pivot, and adapt based on market demand versus thinking that you're always going to be right.
Beautiful. Evolving, and as Darwin says, we are in the evolution process, and if you don't evolve, you die. And we can see it with AI progress. Everybody's talking about losing jobs, but actually it's an opportunity for growth and building jobs of the future. None of us are able to achieve success on our own. You mentioned your father being great inspiration. Is there anybody else who really helped you along the way?
I look at my team above and beyond it just being like a mentor. I've been blessed to have built amazing teams, and they challenge me every single day. They encourage me. They're the greatest cheerleaders, but they also, again, will push back. And so they inspire me. They get me out of my bed when I don't want to get out of bed, more than like a mentor who I feel like, honestly, I would let down. My team is that constant like group of cheerleaders and community that I've been so blessed to have. So my father coached me. He supported me. I'm lucky to have a handful of great mentors, but really like my team has been what's kind of spurred and kept things going on and challenged me to dream bigger. It's the group of people you surround yourself with that really matters most.
And how did you learn to fire fast? You mentioned that at the beginning of our chat. That's a very difficult task, especially for women, because empathy goes in the way, and we always think about their immediate family and how it's going to impact them. What's your strategy?
I hate saying it this way, but a lot of practice. I mean, the first couple of times I've had to let people go, they become these long, drawn out processes. But practice makes closer to perfect. And I've gotten much better at it. So it's one of those things that it's incredibly painful, and each time it gets a little bit easier. I think the main thing with firing fast is not getting in your head about it, remembering to be objective. I think we typically, again, empathy will jump in, and you want to remain as objective as possible versus as subjective, or kind of like go into those fields as just, hey, this is the right decision for my business. I know that this is a hard personal decision, but keeping that business first is really kind of will allow you to fire faster. And then lastly, with firing faster, depending on your state, depending on regulations, don't get into the conversation. Don't give cause. I'm so sorry, this isn't working. I mean, they should know that firing is going to happen because you've actually done regular performance reviews. And that will allow you to make that very clean break when the time is there versus blindsiding someone. And so the consistency and discipline with those reviews will set you up for success with that faster fire.
Beautiful. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are put in hot water. So in a life, how are you in hot water? How are you brewing, Virginia?
I look at this land and startup world as something where we're in hot water because we have limited time. We have limited time until someone else comes on in here. We have limited resources compared to some of our key competitors. We've been in a situation recently where a lot of our key quote unquote competitors, I look at them as actually adjacent companies, are watching what we're doing, and they're much more well-funded than we are. And so there's pressure of how much you share. Are they friends? Are they enemies? Do you keep them close? Do you keep them closer? And that allows us to be a little bit tighter about how we're going to work. And so because we have less and fewer resources than we have to be a little bit smarter and grittier and more resilient. And so the pressure of limited resources, runway shortening and or extending, and then the competitive pressures really forces us to get creative. And I think that's been something that's been really helpful, where we're like, okay, we've like one thing and better work. And then therefore you get into that singular focus. I was speaking with someone about this the other day. They're like, this idea and this idea and this idea. And the short runway, the competitors with eyeballs allows you to say, what can I do? How can I go 2 inches wide, 2 miles deep? But maybe on the surface, like it feels like a little bit more, but really how do you stay focused to make what you need happen? And that's really, I think, what increased pressure forces you to get to.
As a woman with many action points and blueprints, what is the number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my career?
As an avid reader, this is a very hard question. Similarly, it's a hard one, like when it said, what's your favorite? So I'm going to, respectfully, ask for 3 very quickly. 1,
okay.
The Power of Moments. It's about designing and curating moments, and whether that's a community moment, whether it's hiring and firing, how people interact with one another. Again, as I shared, your network is your net worth, and the experience you are creating and facilitating is going to really impact you as a leader. And so that's not just like, how am I designing a party? This is not a book about honestly gathering or parties, but it's really about the human experience. Similarly, the innovation stack, it's a great story with Square versus Amazon and how you have this magic sauce, and that innovation stack is really what's going to transform the difference. Something that when I started, I read very early, and it was an amazing pivotal moment where I'm like, oh, well, someone's going to come steal this idea if I let, and it will prevent you from getting that moment of like a blockage when you're like, oh, there's no point in doing this anyhow. Someone else is just going to come in and a competitor is going to take it. It helps remind you of your unique like magic sauce. And then last atypical, like this one's a weird one, and forgive my language, but it's Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You just have to like let it go and not care. You just got to get out there and do it, and just don't care what they think. Just do.
Not giving an F word. Let's imagine that you could meet anyone in the world for a private breakfast anywhere in the world. Who would you invite and where would you go to?
If I could do this with someone alive right now, because my normal answer would be my father. Honestly, right now it'd be Martha Stewart. I would love to have an experience with her at her farmhouse in Bedford. She's the queen of brand building, reinvention, evolution, hospitality. For someone in my field, I see her as such an icon, and I think she's an icon as a businesswoman in general. And I'd love to pick her brain about evolving a business over the decades and constantly innovating.
Well, Martha could probably advise you on how to make that party for Tay-Tay. Can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote and how did it change you?
I love the quote by Theodore Roosevelt, do what you can with what you have where you are. It's a great reminder to really take stock of like the present and constantly do your best with the resources that you have at hand. I think it's a great guiding principle because you can't have it all. And you also can't go back and say, well, if I only had this. It's about doing what you can at that moment with what you have and exactly where you are at that time, and I think it's very freeing when you can lean into that.
What's next for Virginia and Partytrick? What's next exciting project that is looming?
We are rolling out our new B2B platform, which is incredibly exciting to be powering businesses and brands. And a lot of what we're doing is powering ambassador programs, empowering and empowering their kind of community, their brand activations. And I love that. And so what's next and exciting is really taking the world by storm, getting this out there, building my team, building our market share, and transforming the experiences that people are going to have. Like, if it's too short to go to a bad party, sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. If you're going to spend our most valuable resource, which is time, it better be worth it. And obviously for a business, there's monetary reason behind that. But as a consumer and as someone who cares about the human experience, I just want to make it better for everyone who's going to these experiences.
Virginia, it's been a pleasure to have you. If you could give our listeners one bold challenge or a piece of actionable advice to help them take their career to the next level, what would it be?
First, thank you so much for having me. And my advice and my encouragement is get out there and just get into action. Get that party going, build the community, just do the thing. Don't wait until it's perfect. Just go, because progress is what is going to get you to that closer point of perfection.
And what's your secret sauce to networking?
Follow up and follow through is everything. I'm a little embarrassed to share, but I definitely have a networking project in my Asana where it prompts me and it reminds me to stay on top of these relationships. It's so easy to let time pass if you don't have that like helper and hack to do that. So one, write down after you leave those conversations like something meaningful and use that in the follow-up to really create that true lasting connection instead of trying to think that your brain's going to remember it. So that consistency and personalization is what I suggest.
Thank you, Virginia, for sharing your insights and experiences and great bullets of information. Your work is not only transforming the event industry, but also paving the way for more sustainable future with many female entrepreneurs. And that's it from episode 175 of the PhD Life Friend. Thanks to our guest, Virginia Frischkorn. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on It and turn on the notifications. Give us a like, give us a heart, whatever reaction you can give to encourage these algorithms and create that FOMO and create that fostering community. Next week, we're going to have Grisel Rios, and we are going to talk about scientific background that prepares you for a tech career. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Finally, as Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Or change an atmosphere, change network. Today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want. Thank you.